Het-Heru, Guru Nefer, Assalamu alaikum. This is Kasakma Keperu with another broadcast for you. And today I want to talk about something very unique. It's going to be the different levels of your existence. And the reason why I want to touch on this is simply because the dominant, the mainstream society is pumping information out there about who you are. And they're telling you you're only human, you make mistakes. Well, the truth is you're not human. And there are different aspects to who you are that are very vital and important for you to understand. So, okay. But before I go into that, I want to talk a little bit about this lecture I heard today by these individuals who call themselves spiritual. Now, you know, there are a lot of people out there, a lot of spiritual groups out there. But what was really fascinating and interesting about this, actually about this particular group, was the fact that the leader of the group, he kept cursing, and it was always like fuck, shit, and this and that. And at first I didn't catch it, but after a while, when he kept cursing, I would like, wait a minute, hold on a second. You're saying you're a spiritual person and you're cursing like this? And then he brought up one of the women that I guess he teaches or counsels. And then she came up and in a very not in a very feminine way, started to curse as well, like a sailor. And I was just like, wait a minute, hold up. Does anybody not see the problem here? That they're calling themselves spiritual, yet they're using all these cuss words, and they don't understand the power of the spoken word and how it commands and brings forth a reality. I was just dumbfounded. I just let it go. But I kind of knew going into it that these individuals were just full of it, because, you know, a lot of things they were saying was just really incorrect. But people follow it, you know, there are a lot of people that are following him, you know. So I would just say my advice to you, if you're going to seek out a diviner or a teacher, or if you come across a sage, just check their credentials and just really deep dive into the work and see. Because a lot of times these people give themselves away with just multiple contradictions in their work, or they don't live or practice the lifestyle they preach. And we already know this with Christian ministers, because they're the biggest hypocrites on the planet. So just be aware of that, because, you know, it's very disconcerting to become involved in something like a Jim Jones thing. So it turned out that they want you to drink some weird Kool-Aid or something, or they're just having these extramarital affairs, or, you know, I don't know, craziness in the congregation. So just be very, very careful of some of these guys. And I mean, what I saw was just point blank obvious. I think if you have a spiritual teacher and they're just cursing, you need to leave them alone. You know, that is just, that to me, that's like unacceptable. You know, you just don't do that as a Cometian, as a Babalao, as a witch, warlock, or whatever you want to call yourself. You just don't go around cursing like that. You know what I mean? There's something definitely wrong. And what was even worse was the individual himself and herself. They didn't check themselves. They were very comfortable doing that. And that tells me that you don't have critical analysis. You don't have self-awareness to understand that your behavior is incorrect. And of course, they don't have an oracle reading, so they wouldn't know, because oracle reading could be the objective measure to let you know from Tahuti that your conduct is incorrect. But of course, they don't abide by the oracles. So anyway, speaking of that, if you're looking to do a reading on your relationship or your career or the year, you can click the link below and schedule a reading with me, and hit the like button and share this video with friends and family. It's going to be a great video. One of those videos you're going to want to archive and refer back to. Now, I talked about before that there are different levels to your existence. Now, why is that important? It's important for you to understand that, so you don't get trapped in the mind-body experience, meaning you don't think that The physical being is the end all and be all of your existence, that you have innate powers within you. And the first and most primary of that is that you are an eternal being. You have no beginning, you have no end. You will forever be. You will forever exist. You are not subject to time and space. Okay? You have always been. So when you want to trace the history, the ancestry to humankind, man and womankind, you want to use that terminology, and you want to say that we've been on the planet for the last 100,000 years. No, we've been on this planet prior to our physical existence for millions of years, billions of years going back. In fact, what's I find very interesting, and maybe correct, that once you get into Scientology, not that I'm advising you to, but I'm just telling you what they do. From what I've heard, that they ask you to sign a billion-year contract with them. And I like that idea because they recognize the fact that you are an eternal being. And the idea is putting forth to you that here is a contract for 1 billion years because your spirit will exist that long and more. Okay. So very, very interesting that they do that. So anyway, so as I said before, it's very important that you don't get caught in the mind-body experience. It's like watching a movie, you know, and it's a really good movie, and you become wrapped up in the fate of the protagonist, but you forget that it's just a movie. So when the protagonist falls off a cliff, you freak out, or when he's in a fight, you're rooting for him, or let's say in a horror movie, when the girl is hears something behind the door and she's stupid enough to go and open the door, and you're yelling, "Don't open that door! Don't open that door!" You're getting caught up in the movie. Well, life is the movie, and the trick is to not get caught up in life, to understand that you are, and in some New Age or occult people say, a multi-dimensional being. You exist in many places at once. Let's start in the beginning. In the beginning, there was the one, which was you, God, man, God, woman, or the yin and yang combination. And in the beginning, there was one. This is the first level of your existence, the oneness. You are one with all things, not just in the universe, because that's a limited way of looking at things, but in all that there is. All right? You are one with all that there is, and all that there is just one. Then we can look at this as two different realms, the objective and the subjective realm. Subjective realm is the one. The objective realm is the next phase where you individualize yourself. You became individualized. So the physical being, the Geb, came into existence. And all the other billions of people on the planet for you to interact with. Keep in mind that everyone on the planet is just an aspect of you that you're interacting with. They're not separate sentient beings. They're all part of the collective, the one consciousness, the collective consciousness. So when you speak to someone, you are having a dialogue with yourself because they're nothing more than avatars that you created. So that is another aspect of you. The aspect of here, the physical being and the avatars you've created in this three-dimensional holographic experience. Make sense? Now, the other thing you have to keep in mind is that when you're interacting with people, or when those people are not around, you're not in the same space-time continuum. Because once that person leaves your sight and they go home or go to work or whatever, they could be existing in a different time. They could be in the past and you could be in the future. Not by a lot, but just a little bit. This is what we call as time dilation. When you come in contact with them again, if you meet up for a drink or whatever, or coffee or tea, then you bridge the time gap and you both come into the same space-time continuum. But when you are away, you are existing in two different time frames. Keep that in mind. Very interesting. All right. Now, not only are the avatars around you, the billions and millions of people in different races, nationalities, but now you also exist in many different lifetimes at once. So there's an aspect of you right now that exists in ancient Egypt. There's another aspect of you that exists prior to ancient Egypt, probably in Europe. And there's another aspect of you that is it exists in the Wild West. There's another aspect of you that exists in the Dark Ages. And all of these versions of you, which are your many past lives, are being experienced at this present moment. And you can draw upon that knowledge, because every now and then some of that knowledge will seep through and it will come to you, and you may have deja vu or something weird like that. So as you sit here in this space time, you also sit in many other time frames, historical time frames, where you are experiencing different lifetimes. You're a very complex being. So all this stuff is just fascinating. Okay, here's the other aspect to yourself. There's your higher and your lower self. The higher self is perceiving through the left brain. It is perceiving individualized things. It is perceiving things as separate from you. I see sky is separate from me. I see sun separate from me. I see car. I see boy with basketball, all separate from me. Then there is the higher self, your higher self, which perceives the whole. It perceives everything as one. That's the higher self. Meaning it gauges all your lifetimes at once. It can perceive all that at once. Whereas the individualized self, the lower mind, is subject to time, space. The start, middle, and end is subject to that. So it can only perceive the individualized things. It perceives time, where the higher mind doesn't perceive time in the same way. It perceives nonlinear space-time. All right. Let's take this to the next level. As you are experiencing your multiple lives through history, all at once simultaneously, you are also experiencing many infinite versions of yourself in parallel worlds. There's a version of you who's rich. There's a version of you who's poor. There's a version of you who's a famous, acclaimed scientist. There's a version of you who's a politician. There's a version of you who's a pirate. There's a version of you who's an airplane pilot. All right? You can't perceive all these versions of you, but they are happening. And you are moving through these parallel worlds. You are this multidimensional being. And all of this is going on, and you cannot perceive it, but it is happening. Okay? So that, my beloved, is the many different levels of your existence. But the main thing that you have to keep in mind is that you share in the quality of God, but not in the same quantity. Maybe in terms of mass, because God is all that there is. And it's really you, because you're never disconnected from source. You're always connected with source. It's just a matter of what you're perceiving at this particular moment is this fourth dimensional experience, because you have made an agreement to live out a certain theme so that your oversoul can relay that information to source, Netter. Okay? So with this understanding that you are an eternal being who cannot experience pain or poverty or lack or sorrow, and that there is an aspect, a safety mechanism built within you called Amen. You see, God in her infinite wisdom knew that when she placed us here on Gaia, Earth, that it was fraught with difficulties, tornadoes, tsunamis, earthquakes. So, and also hunger, disease. So God placed within us the aspect of Amen, the hidden part, which that's what it means, Amen, the hidden, which is that state of rest, that state of peace, a peace that nothing can interfere with or shatter. So when you're going through the most horrific things in history, such as the transatlantic slave trade, such as the Holocaust. There's an aspect of you that you can tune into to center yourself and become at peace with what is happening. Whether you come in contact or understand that your time living on this fourth dimensional plane is over, that you're about to get executed. And you say to yourself before your final moments, it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. And you say joyfully because you're at rest, you're at peace within. That is the power of Amen, and that is the power that our Creator gave to us. But we don't know that because the dominant society, the mainstream media, keeps preaching to us fear. It tries to instill fear. It tries to instill pain within us. So what happens when you do all of that? You vibrate at a different frequency, one that doesn't connect you to Amen. In fact, it keeps you away from Amen. Your vibration then becomes erratic and you become impulsive. This is when you have impulsive consumers and buying everything. They want you to be that way. And what the church won't tell you, what the mainstream media won't tell you, is that the reality of who you are is no thingness. Again, no thingness. You are no one thing. Hence, you are everything. You are peace. You are Amen. Do you understand that? You are a peace that nothing can shatter, but you have to learn to tune into that power. It's not going to be easy because you've grown up, however old you are, 20, 25, 30, 40 years, trained in an environment that teaches you to indulge in negative emotions, to stay away from that peaceful Amen, Zen, Nirvana state, to stay away from that. And you've done a good job at doing that because you actually think that you are the physical being. You got caught up in the movie. So now you're all wrapped up in the movie and you're forgetting it's just a projection. That who you are is all powerful. And that despite the death of the physical Geb or the physical vehicle, you will exist always. You may choose to come back to this planet Earth, or you may say, I'm going to come and go visit Zeta Reticuli 1 and Zeta Reticuli 2. Or I may hang out in Jupiter because I'm bad like that. That's how I roll. And I am not kidding. I'm not being facetious. So think about that. Think about the enormity of who you are and your power. And beloved, that concludes my broadcast for today. If you've liked this, like I said, hit the like button and, consider subscribing to our Patreon. You can do so for as little as $1, and I'll give you a shout out if you do that. And until my next broadcast, this is Kasankma Keperu, and that's all for now.